Well, folks, we've got to do it. We've got to talk about this Pete Hegseth hearing. What an absolute embarrassment that truly was. I could go ahead and give you the Cliff Note version of it. It was just one of the most embarrassing hearings that I've ever seen. As I was sitting there watching, I said to myself, this should be a Will Ferrell movie. This should be like a skit on Saturday Night Live. This should just be something that we should watch and go, yeah, did you see the part where, Mark Wayne Mullen jumps in to say, hey, what about all you guys that cheated on your wives and beat you women? And what about all you guys that showed up drunk? I mean, it should have absolutely just been a skit. It should have been a funny movie that we all had a laugh at and kept moving. But this is the real world. And there are people going to bat for Pete Hegseth, and they're behind Pete Hegseth. And let's just go ahead and cut right through it. They're for him because Donald Trump said to be. If Donald Trump turns on him tomorrow, they'll hate Pete Hegseth. But right now, they're going to bat for this guy like never before, and they want to put him out there as Secretary of Defense. And that's truly a terrifying thought, because if you sit there and watch this hearing, the guy is clearly unqualified, and that's the part that I really want to focus on. I highly recommend that you go watch the section where Tim Kaine just absolutely destroys him, roasts him to no end about all of his affairs, about all of his public drunkenness, about all of his, alleged abuse and everything that is in his closet. He sits there and really pins him down and hammers him. And I think that you should. I think you absolutely should. When these people comes off like they're the party of morals and values and they're the ones that's children of God, then you need to hold them to account and say, no, if you're gonna ride on that, then you have to live that, and we're going to hold you accountable for it. I absolutely believe you should, but to sit here and criticize Pete Hegseth's drinking and his sex life is not going to win over anybody in the Republican Party, because they're going to defend that. And MAGA, let's just be realistic, MAGA does not care. Morals and values mean nothing to them. They only use it if it had been Hunter Biden sitting there, they would have hammered him to no end. If it's Gavin Newsom in California, there's got to be conditions on aid to him, but not to Ron DeSantis. They are complete and total hypocrites. So we could sit here, we could point out his hypocrisy, we could point out his drunkenness, we could point out his sex life. It's not going to change MAGA's mind. It's not going to change any Republican's mind. But maybe if we would put more of the focus on this next clip, when he's pinpointed down and asked about the job itself, he doesn't know. He clearly isn't qualified. So if you take all the other stuff off the table, to me, this right here should be disqualifying. Take a look.
You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact
No, you
amount of
couldn't,
nations
because
in
you're
that,
not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do-
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work
Okay.
on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Look.
So I wanted to share this story with y'all after watching that clip. Back when I was a teenager, I was looking for a part-time job. And I saw a sign on a guy's garage that said, experienced mechanic needed. Now, I'm a kid just needing some work and needing some money, and so I stop in and I'm like, well, I could learn. I could figure it out. So I walk in and I ask if I could put in an application, and the guy looks at me and he's like, well, hold on, I'll have to get Bill over here, whatever his name was. Old guy walks up to me and looks at me, and I said, yeah, I saw a sign that said you're looking for an experienced mechanic. He said, I am. He said, you got any experience as a mechanic? I was like, well, no, but I can learn. He's like, I ain't got no need for you. I was like, but I can learn if you'll show me how. Oh, you gotta have experience, but I ain't got time to teach no kid. I was like, well, what do you need somebody to just clean up in here? I can clean up. I can take out the trash. I already got somebody to do that. I didn't even make it to the desk for an interview. I didn't even make it to the part about filling out an application because I wasn't experienced. And he wasn't even going to give me the time of day. And that's how it works in the real world. That's how it works for people that actually went to the polls and voted for Trump in the election. Those people in everyday life has to be cut down to size every day and told, nope, sorry, you're not experienced here. But in Trump's world, it's got nothing to do with experience. Trump did not care at all if Pete Hegseth had 1 ounce of experience in any of it or knew any of those details. And he sure as hell didn't care about his personal life, his drinking, or his cheating on his women. He didn't care none about that. All he wanted to hear was somebody be loyal to him. That's all Donald Trump wants. And in this next clip, Pete Hegseth is asked, would you, if you was given an order that was illegal, What would you do in that situation? And he refuses to answer. And I think this is the part we should really focus in on. Take a look.
As the Secretary of Defense, you will be the one man standing in the breach should President Trump give an illegal order, right? I'm not saying he will, but if he does, you are going to be the guy that he calls to implement this order. Do you agree that there are some orders that can be given by the Commander-in-Chief that would violate the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, thank you for your service. But I reject the premise that President Trump is going to be giving illegal orders.
No, I'm not saying he will, but do you believe there is such a thing as an illegal order that Joe Biden or any other president, Donald Trump, could give? Is there anything that a commander-in-chief could ask you to do with the uniformed military that would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, anybody of any party
Right.
could give an order that is against the Constitution or against the law.
Right. Okay. So are you saying that you would stand in the breach and push back if you were given an illegal order?
I start by saying I reject the premise that President
I
Trump will
understand.
be
You've
giving
done your
any
genuflecting
illegal
to him,
orders
but
at all.
President Trump said in November that he is willing to consider using the active duty military against the, quote, enemy within. Have you been personally involved in discussions of using the U.S. military active duty inside the United States?
Senator, I'm glad we finally got to the topic of border security equaling national security because it's been abdicated and ignored for the last 4 years.
That wasn't my question. I'm just asking, have you been involved? You're about to be the Secretary of Defense, potentially. Have you been involved in discussions about using the active duty military inside the United States?
Senator, I am not yet the Secretary of Defense.
Right. I'm
If
just asking.
confirmed, I would be party to any number of
So you haven't been in
conversations,
any of these
which I would not
conversations?
reveal what I have discussed with the President of the United States.
Just
or
have
not.
you.
So, yeah, he's clearly not going to answer this. And the reason why he's not going to answer is because he's simply there to just do Trump's bidding. That's why he's there. He's there for that reason and that reason alone. His experience doesn't matter. His past doesn't matter. None of those things matters to Trump. It's will you be loyal to me? And here we are in a predicament like this with a guy sitting there being asked those questions and he can't answer yes or no. And that should literally terrify anyone out there, regardless of your political leanings. I don't care where you fall on the political spectrum, how far to the right or how far to the left you go, or how in the middle you are, or how much you might not even care, how much it might not matter to you. When they're sitting there having the conversation about turning the American military on people that are citizens of this country that Donald Trump calls the enemy from within, when they're having that conversation and he can't answer that question, and that doesn't raise red flags and doesn't alarm more people, we've got a real problem. And I can't count the people who I've asked personally that have left comments in my comment section or sent me hateful emails. I've came back at them and said, would you stand with me if the American military was suddenly going to be used against me? I've asked people that I used to consider friends that same question, and they give me the same kind of answer. He wouldn't do that. No, he wouldn't do. I'm not asking if he would do it. I'm not asking if he would do it, if it's going to happen. I'm asking if you would stand back and stand by while he did. That's what I'm asking. And they can't answer that. I did have one listener that wrote to me who said he voted for Trump and said, I want you to know I did vote for Trump, but no, I would not stand for that if they came for you. I've had one person. Everyone else that I've asked that question to ducks and dodges, just like Pete Hegseth. And you know why they duck and dodge? Because their loyalty is not to that flag hanging behind me. Their loyalty is not to this Constitution laying here on my desk. Their loyalty is not to the Bible that's in my drawer here. Their loyalty is to none of that. Their loyalty is strictly to Donald Trump and his radical agenda. That's what they're loyal to. So I really hate to bring down the room, but when Donald Trump says the enemy from within and they stay silent, and they don't say anything, and the best they can say to you is, he wouldn't do that, they're not your friend. They're not your friend. And you always go back to that Martin Luther King quote, in the end, we won't remember the words of the enemy, we'll remember the silence of friends. I will also remember the ones that ducked and dodged and would not answer these crucial questions. So, yeah, that was one of the most embarrassing hearings that I've ever seen. It should have just been a Will Ferrell movie. It should have just been a Saturday Night Live skit. It should have just been something you watched and got drunk while you watched it and just thought it was fucking funny. But we're in a world where that's the real world. And they're perfectly okay with that because their loyalty ain't to us, their loyalty ain't to that flag, their loyalty is to Donald Trump, and it's truly disgusting. I truly appreciate y'all, though, so much for sticking with me. We've made it over 500,000 subscribers. We're on the road to 1 million, and I am working on some pretty cool things here on the channel that I can't wait to bring you. This coming Tuesday, it'll be the 21st. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time here on the YouTube channel, I will be interviewing Gloria Johnson from the Tennessee 3, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation she and I is going to have, and I'm looking forward to having more conversations with more people and figuring out how we can get our message out there. So thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I mean, what a time to be alive, folks. What a time to be alive.